Okay. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the School District of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of Chatham Borough and Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and TAP. Mr. DeQuilla?
Ms. Ross?
Here.
Ms. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Here.
Ms. Kenny? Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Smith? Ms. Weber?
Here.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Ciccarelli.
Here.
7 present and accounted for. The flag is behind Dr. LaSousa.
Okay, perfect. Please join us if you may. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Well, we will start with the update on the Harding discussions. Dr. LaSousa, you will man the slideshow?
Yes,
Should we send everybody out?
yes. I think
Okay.
if the board could go into the seats, Ms. President wanted to give a brief overview of status with Harding.
Let's hope I don't fall off stage.
Okay, so we just wanted to give a quick overview of some of the facts surrounding the possibility of a relationship between Chatham and Harding. So why would we accept tuition students? So plus or minus 90% of the school district of Chatham's operating budget comes from local property taxes. We would like to reduce the reliance on property taxes. Tuition is one revenue source that offsets the reliance on property taxes. And as you can see at the bottom, potential revenue that we could receive from taking on a send and receive contract with Harding is, at 120 students, could be $1.8 million, 130 students, $1.95 million. Why now? So CHS's enrollment, as Dr. LaSousa's presentation showed at the last board meeting, has and will continue to decline. If you can see by the slide up here, both in the graph and in the table, in 2019, our enrollment was at 1,340 students, and we anticipate that by 2032, it'll be at 1,000 students. More budgetary pressures now than we've ever had in the past, obviously based on lots of things we can't control, inflationary pressure, wages and health benefits, which just keep increasing, and interest rates. Higher rates obviously equals more cost to borrow, which equals more cost to complete capital work. Why Harding? So, outside of the fact that Harding approached us, Chatham and Harding already share both bus routes via First Student, and Green Village, half of it sits in Chatham, half of it sits in Harding. Obviously, there are direct neighbors, and it would make sense. CHS can easily accommodate Harding's 9th to 12th grade based on our enrollment. So 25 to 40 kids per grade level is what Harding would be bringing in. Obviously, it's just for 9 through 12. Significant number of Harding's 8th graders historically attend private high schools. So obviously not all of them would be coming here. And 100 to 130 students total across grades 9 to 12. If in fact this did go through, transportation and extraordinary special education costs would be 100% paid for by Harding. I know we've had some questions about what our cost per student is in Chatham versus what the tuition would be, but you need to take into account that we do pay for transportation and special education costs for our students, which would not be a factor for the Harding students. It would be 25 to 35 students 1 year at a time, for example, a 4-year ramp, 25 to 35 students per year, 1.5 million to 1.95 million per year in revenue, and a plus or minus 5-year contract length to begin in August of 2026, which is the year that their current contract with Madison is up at the end of the school year 2026. So that's it. That's the basics.
Yes. And that's one?
That's
Okay, good. Moving on. Hi, Brad. Okay. Any questions, comments? Ms. Weber?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ann. Thanks for all these notes. This is great. So already in 2024, it looks like we have declined more than the total number of Harding kids. So our replacement rate, we're already kind of in the hole, if you will. But Dr. LaSousa, my question to you is, Harding aside, if our enrollment continues to decline, is there a scenario where there's not enough students, even in Chatham, to offer certain classes?
Yes, I think Ms. Allen tried to asked this of me last meeting, and I was a little confused. But yes, of course, if our enrollment goes down, we run our courses and other programs off of the number of students who participate or are interested in those programs. So depending on which program or course sees enrollment decline would depend on which ones we potentially would not be able to run.
Right, so it's almost the opposite effect, that some folks are saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be overcrowding. It's actually the other way. If we don't get enough students to cover some of the classes, AP, whatever, we may not be able to offer it. And then, shift
Yes,
shift our
that's right.
resources.
Yeah, and it's not just AP, it's,
No.
right now we're sharing, we've been co-opting some of our athletic programs like wrestling. We've had low numbers in other athletic programs that we've tried to continue to keep propped up. We, as you know, ran into staffing issues with German this past year, and we're not running it in 6th grade right now, so it's being phased out of our middle school. Chinese has a very low enrollment throughout the district. So there are programs or courses here or there that aren't just AP courses. Now, there are 1 or 2 AP courses where the enrollment is already low, and those are ones that could be jeopardized too.
Right, so it's really
But,
to the...
yeah, it's
an
any
advantage.
elective where
If
we
can-
don't have
Right,
a large number of students.
If we can take in these students, it may help us run the class, which otherwise may not have been, we just couldn't if we don't have enough bodies in the seat. My other question is, not question, but comment, Ann, on your, I think it was your very first slide. You had mentioned, this is like, I think the key thing. I think we all agree that it's not sustainable to keep just raising taxes, raising taxes, raising taxes, raising taxes. At some point, something has to give. I mean, I don't want to speak for the councils or the committee, but they speak all the time about not wanting to raise taxes and doing more with less, and robbing Peter to pay Paul and putting expenses off. So this is kind of a once-in-a-generation opportunity to offset our reliance on property tax. So, if everybody, comes to meetings, our meetings, committee meetings, and said, oh, you got to lower taxes, this is one way to do it.
Correct.
This is one way to alleviate, and it's not a small amount. I mean, if 120 kids come, by your math here, it's $1.8 million annually. That's not one time, okay, but put new roofs or new turf. This is annually. So this is one of the only ways to increase revenue.
Totally.
Right, we can't just put out a bond, we can't just, there's really no other ways to increase revenue at this rate. So I think based on what you said, Ann, aside from the money, the enrollment decline, I mean, this seems like it's beneficial to Chatham students so that we ensure that we run the classes, certainly taxpayers, this Bill Heap doesn't yell at us all the time. Hopefully it'll help the committee and the councils as well, if we can, not pit the school needs against the town needs. So I think this is a win-win if, again, it's preliminary, you'd said that
Right.
a bunch of times, but, with a lot of the negativity, I don't know that the negativity outweighs $1.8 million,
Right. I would-
right? Oh, overcrowding, oh, my kid won't get to play football as much. I don't know, $1.8 million. Maybe take a rest on the football sidelines and have a drink of water. Right, 1.8 million is a lot
Well,
of,
and I think too, there are other things in town that the district does help to pay for, such as, you need a new turf field, you need a new
right,
whatever. $1.8 million is a lot of money.
yeah, each turf field costs, just to refurbish it, it's $500,000, 500 for Haas, 500 for Cougar.
Right.
That's $1 million every, 8 to 10 years. Other schools don't replace them as often because they lock them up.
Right.
We obviously it's a town resource, that's why we have to replace them more frequently. But that infusion of cash would help with all of that. It would have certainly have helped last year running that, the referendum for extra cash. So those are the things that we might not have to do in the future, not run those questions, not pull at people's heartstrings that, oh my goodness, we need to, we need security. Well, if we have an additional $1.8 million, you can live a little bit more within your means. But that was my comment. I just wanted to ask Dr. LaSousa about
Also
the,
brings us closer to free kindergarten.
and is 1.8, Mike, or Bradley, isn't that like almost our entire 2% tax levy?
Yeah, the tax levy's about 1.4.
I'm sorry,
The tax,
1.4.
the,
1.
the tax levy right now is, and the budget we just passed was about 74 million. So 2% of that is 1.48, right? So this is the entire tax levy
Right, and
that we're talking about.
That's pretty much the cost of kindergarten. Did we not gather that kind of money from kindergarten?
Yeah.
Right.
So, it would be irresponsible of us not to consider this.
Right.
People say, oh my gosh, why would we do this? It would be irresponsible not to even consider it.
Right.
So that's what we're doing, we're considering it. Nothing's signed, we're not going to make a bad contract, right? We're considering it, which, as we should.
And that is the most important point. Someone came to us and said, we're willing to give you $1.8 million. We're not going to say no, we're going to consider it.
Right.
Now, let's not go spending all the money yet, right? I mean,
No.
we have
We need it.
lots of things we need to do.
but
We need
Mr.
to address, maybe we need buses, or maybe we need improvements to the cafeteria, or other things, whatever it is, right? Including free all-day kindergarten, whatever. But this 1.8 million or 1.4 million, whatever it turns out to be, is something we absolutely, from a fiscal responsibility perspective, have to consider.
Bradley, without increased revenue, how likely is it that we can get to free tuition for kindergarten anytime soon?
I mean, costs continue to go up, right? Every March, we sit here and have the same conversation about having to pull on different levers, and we constantly talk about the one lever we have, which is reducing employment. And that, in turn, reduces classes, it increases class size, and no one wins. So,
And tuition,
right. So we bring in tuition, it's found money.
right? And that's why we charge kindergarten, too.
That's
Because
correct.
you can only pull on so many levers.
That's correct.
I don't know.
I have a couple questions about the current environment at CHS, and given if the Harding students came over, we'd be at parity to where we are a couple years ago, right? About? Is that what I saw? Or maybe even a little less?
Yes, but I just would point out that if
They all
the
came.
contract were to take effect in 2026, by 2026, we'll probably have, if we have 1,200 students in the high school now, we'll probably be at 1170 or something by then.
Okay.
But then there's a 4-year, so we're 2 years away from the first Harding students joining us, if this were to happen. And then we're only going to incrementally take them on over a 4-year period. So we're actually 6 years away. It won't be till 2030 that we have the full 120 or 130 or however many students it would end up being if this were to happen. So it's 6 years out. Our enrollment by then would be below 1,100 at that point. So
And
yeah.
right now, we're at 1355?
Right now, we're at 1,200. We
1,200,
were at
okay.
1,340 when the pandemic started.
Okay. So my questions are, and I know what I've experienced at the high school, which has been nothing but honestly phenomenal, but are there or have there been wait lists for any classes based on enrollment? And can you speak a little bit to average class size in a typical class, and when we end up maxing out in class size, what that looks like?
On the waitlist question, I would need to ask Dr. Walker how course selection came in last year. So typically speaking, what usually happens is that we hit January or February, students begin making their selections with teacher input. So teachers make recommendations into courses that require a recommendation. Students put into Genesis their requests for courses that do not require teacher recommendation. We match all that together, and then we begin scheduling rising seniors, then we move on to rising juniors, then rising sophomores, then rising freshmen. And what we do is develop a course tally for every single course in the school. And the course tallies then inform how we allot our staff. And that's why it's important, we make decisions about which courses run and which courses don't run based on the tallies. But what happens is you move through the grade levels, and then also, once you make the allotments, then there tends to be movement, which is why we have a couple of different deadlines for students to request changes or to put in for waivers. So typically speaking, we don't have any wait lists when we are at the point of taking the course tallies and translating them into a master schedule based on the students' requests and input into the courses they want. The wait lists more often come into being a month or 2 months after that, when there's movement because students have a change of mind and want into a course, or because there's a different recommendation based on how the student has performed over the final 3 or 4 months of the year, or there's a waiver process. That's when we usually get into issues regarding wait lists. And then we also, and this year we experienced more of this than we usually do, we have movement into the district from students who have been studying in other states, countries, private schools, and when they come in, we have to find places for them, but there are times when courses might be maxed out in terms of class size and we can't get them in. So it's a much more dynamic process. Like, it's not as simple as this is the way it is. Our class sizes right now, for the most part, are maxed at the high school at 25. There are some exceptions where we'll go over. We tend to be more willing to go over in AP and upper level courses than we are in courses where students require more support. I can't give you an average class size because it really depends on the course and the department and what we have. I'd say we're probably in the 23 range or 22 range right now, which is extremely low for high schools. It's probably one of the lowest class size numbers in all of New Jersey, I would guess. My own kids go to a high school where class sizes are between 28 and 30 in multiple places, and there are plenty of high schools around that are north of that, north of 30 per class. So
Okay,
Those
thank
are
you.
some of the answers, but we would need to have Doug Walker come in and give a real analysis, or at least give me, some time. I could pull more stuff up if we wanted to look into that. Our class sizes right now at the high school are definitively lower than they were when I was principal, which was 2006 to 2010. And they're definitively lower than they were even 5 or 6 years ago because we have reduced staff, but our rate of reduction of staff has not matched completely the loss of students.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
I think it'll be, can you hear me? I think it'll be helpful if, I know Jill and Chris and I think Ann were at the meeting, to put some numbers on how many kids coming from Harding would be playing sports here. I think that there's a lot of misinformation on how big and what it's going to do to the teams and how much playing time there'll be. So if you can, I think that putting it out there for everyone to hear, if you guys can give us just a little brief overview of what that looks like, I don't think it can hurt, so.
Yeah, but back of the envelope, if there's 30 kids and we have 17 programs, I mean, if you just divide, not everybody's playing, and let's say the gender is split 15-15 each grade. Just back of the envelope without, polling a kid that may be playing lacrosse or football or a young lady playing softball. I mean, if you're talking 30 kids, 15 gals, 15 fellas, we have 17 or 20 programs.
And you're assuming all of them are athletes.
Yeah, that's right.
Right,
That's a good point,
That's a
Mr.
big
Ryan.
assumption.
yeah. But yes, I hear what you're saying. If we can get some sort of,
Slide, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Uh-huh.
just
Yeah.
yep,
to alleviate the fear that that's what is,
We could use wrestlers.
yeah.
totally.
Don't kids wrestle with Summit? right
Now they do.
Summit in Providence or something like that?
Just Summit right now, I believe.
Just Summit right now.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Just want to add one thing for Ms. Allen's question too. There are also some courses, some elective courses that we always have much more interest in than we can accommodate. So for example, the culinary courses that take place in the kitchens in the L wing of the high school. We always have a lot of students who are interested in that, but we begin with preferential treatment for seniors. So we may have let's just say we have 100 students who want in a course or a couple of courses that we have that take place in the foods rooms. We might give all of the seniors who sign up for it that class. We might be able to make our way through a bunch of the juniors, but then say we're not going to provide this course to the sophomores. They'll have to wait until next year when they're juniors or the year after when they're seniors. So we do have a couple of courses like that. They tend to be dictated by the staffing that we have and the facilities that we need to run those kinds of elective programs.
Okay. Well, that's it for me. Moving on to the administrative reports. Dr. LaSousa?
Sure. So first up is the lovely set that is behind you, is for our fall play, which will take place next month. And as a result of that, we will be in the middle school auditorium for our next board meeting, which is on November 4th. And then the very next day is Election Day, and a reminder that the schools will be closed for students on Election Day. We swapped Election Day with Columbus Day, which is today. So no school on Election Day. Second bullet is just simply that we continue to have conversations and make progress with the reorganization of the district. On November 5th, Election Day, our teachers will be here, all of our staff will be here, and we plan to have some of our third grade staff be at Lafayette Avenue School, making some progress and getting to know who will be their new colleagues, and a bunch of our fifth grade staff will be spending time at the middle school on that day to continue their work. And then I have my final point here is about large-scale overnight field trips, which the policy committee of the board has discussed recently, and the curriculum committee as well. We have primarily two significant overnight field trips that we have run. depending on the year in the district. The first is the Disney trip out of the Performing Arts Department once every 4 years, and the other is the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. And what I recommended to the committees and what I explained to them, what we discussed, was that it's becoming, in my view, untenable to continue to operate these large-scale overnight trips for a variety of reasons. The first reason is that for quite a long time now, predating the pandemic, we've had almost an impossible time in securing nursing staff to attend these trips, and we have an increasing array of medical needs that we have to administer to on these trips. The last couple of trips we've run, at least in the 8th grade side, we've been able to contract with an agency who provides us with nursing at a significant cost, which also drives up the cost of the trip. But it's been tenuous to get the type of coverage and support we feel comfortable with the students that we bring along. It's also become more challenging to have staff fully outfitted and have a level of supervision that we're comfortable with. Obviously, when staff attend overnight trips, they have to leave their families or their personal lives or their pets or whoever behind, and that's become challenging. For a while, we were compensating our staff with compensatory days if they were overnight on a trip. We've moved to paying them a sum of money, like the cost of a substitute, but it's still not enough really for us to be comfortable that we've got the level of supervision that we need on these field trips. They also have been disruptive to the operation of some of our schools, generally speaking. So for example, the last time the high school went down to Florida, there was terrible weather on the way back. Flights were delayed. Multiple staff members couldn't make it into work next day, even though schools were running. Doug Walker couldn't even get on a flight until the next morning. I think Lori Gironda got home at 3 a.m. So they're just very disruptive, and the level of liability that we now have in this area is significant. So what I recommended to the committees and what the consensus was is that it's late in the game for this year to cancel the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. So we'll run it this year. We'll muscle through. The trip is going to be more expensive than it's ever been before for a variety of reasons. And looking forward to next year, whichever group, whether it's 8th grade, performing arts, or anyone else, will give everyone a little bit of time to investigate other alternatives and try to find meaningful experiences for students that would take place during the course of the day, maybe over multiple days, but not overnight and not involving air travel. And that will be my recommendation in the plan moving forward. And that's it for me.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Dr. LaSousa? Okay, moving on, Business Administrator's Report, Mr. DeQuilla.
Sure. Very briefly, have a meeting tomorrow with the architect and representative from John O'Hara to discuss the status of the delivery of all the interior security doors and the completion of the project. So I'll have more to come at the next meeting. And I don't mean to correct Ms. Weber, but the current cost to replace a turf field is closer to $1 million. The $500,000 was the cost approximately 8 or 9 years ago. So the costs have escalated that much in the 8 years.
Wow.
It's doubled?
Yes.
Okay,
That's all I have.
okay. And for our Student Liaison Report, Ahana? Oh, yes, you would need that, sorry.
Okay. So just recently, we had a great student and community turnout at all of our Cougar Weekend games, so lots of school spirit, which we were really excited about. We also had a really successful homecoming dance, and then some upcoming stuff. So I think tomorrow, the Key Club is hosting an information session here for anyone in the community to learn more about getting involved and giving back to our community, like getting involved with Kiwanis and other students and events within the high school. And then this Wednesday is the senior breakfast Also, the PSAT will be administered this Wednesday. And then the Chatham Performing Arts Club has like a talent show this Friday night in the CHS auditorium, so that should be fun. And then one like minor student feedback thing is lately there have been some occasional issues with like slower Wi-Fi in parts of the building, and then as well as like weaker cell service in and around the building. So I'm not sure that there's really much that we could do about that. I have a feeling that it's kind of just like a bandwidth issue, just like lots of people trying to get on at the same time. But it's just been something that students and teachers alike have been complaining about a little bit. So just something to note. But aside from that, everything is pretty much business as usual. Mid-semester is coming up in, I think, exactly like 2 weeks. So yeah, that's all.
I don't know about the cell service, but I do know that our tech department has been working on the Wi-Fi, and I would butcher the explanation, but it has to do with multiple systems and configurations updating and being on the same version and whatever.
But they're
So
on
they're
it.
working on it. They're working on the
They're on it.
Wi-Fi.
You can send it back.
Put a cell tower on the building and charge
$1.8 million.
$1.8 million.
Perfect. Uh-huh.
We've actually been approached by that multiple times from wireless providers to stick something on someplace at the high school in particular. But it was nowhere near 1.8 million. It was like 5,000 a year or something like
They were
ridiculous.
offering like $5. It was ridiculous.
They weren't offering that much.
All righty. Thank you, Ahana. Sounds like so far, good year. Okay, moving on to committee reports for personnel. Ms. Weber?
Yes, thanks, Ann. The Personnel Committee met on Wednesday, October 9th. We covered a number of personnel matters that are not currently eligible for public discussion. And of course, we always discuss staffing concerns, substitutes, paras. Again, if anybody knows anybody that wants to be a substitute, please go to the website. And then just other, teacher shortage type stuff, which is just, a constant. So,
Okay,
subs.
perfect. When do you meet again?
No idea.
Okay, November 13th. Okay, perfect. Okay, moving on to curriculum. Ms. Ross?
We met on Wednesday, October 9th. We touched on 2 issues at the middle school. The first is potential start time change. I know there's been some questions. So for reference, adjusted times would, if it happened, would mean that the middle school would start somewhere between 8:30 and 9 a.m. Elementary schools would then swap and start somewhere between 7:40 and 8 o'clock in the morning. Potential schedule changes have been sent to the bus company to see if they could accommodate them. If the route changes are possible, and that's a big if, the decision would still have to be made of when to make the change. So to be clear, we have not committed to anything for the 25-26 school year, so stay tuned for more information on that. Second issue at the middle school is there was a recent streamlining of study halls, and by that I mean putting more students grouped together under the supervision of multiple teachers instead of in individual classrooms. The reason for that was to make study halls more productive and consistent across the board. There have been some mixed reviews on how that's going, so CMS is reassessing, and a decision on what the best format will be is probably going to be reached by the end of the first trimester, which is 2 weeks away. So details on that as well to come. NJSLA scores were sent out October 4th. You probably got them in the mail. As we do every year, Dr. Donahue will review her presentation on all state testing results at our next board meeting here at the middle school, which will be on November 4th. Dr. LaSousa touched a little bit on this, but November 5th is Professional Development Day. So on that day, the main intention is to get the faculties together that are going to be shifting around for the reconfiguration. So as you mentioned, 5th grade will spend the day at the middle school. 3rd grade teachers will spend the day at Lafayette, and, team building, getting to know you activities. The multi-language presenter that was here in August is back, and will hold out we'll hold breakout sessions for all of the grade levels. And then finally, Katie Harms, who is the new ELA supervisor, will meet with the K to 5 grades, as she has already met with CMS and high school. And then finally, reconfiguration plans continue to be fine-tuned, particularly for 5th grade. A decision has been made that 5th graders will only take Spanish. There's not enough staffing to have them choose a language, so that'll have to wait till 6th grade, which is pretty much how it works now. And new electives are being developed that will run on trimesters specifically for the 5th graders. And that's it. And our next meeting is going to be November 13th. Any questions? Okay.
No, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to finance and facilities. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. Finance and Facilities met September 30th. We discussed a particular rec sports team in town using facilities and determined that the reason why they're being charged for the use of these facilities is that we are paying for custodial overtime that goes beyond regular hours of our custodians, and those fees have to be passed on. We discussed our emergency reserve. We had to use some of it to do 2 emergency projects, including a new PA system at CMS because there's no longer parts available for the existing system. And also we have bricks falling off CMS that we have to repair immediately. We also had a construction update. Mr. DeQuilla touched on that briefly before, but the interior security doors are still being fabricated, but the timeline is online to be done here in a few weeks. We discussed projects at CMS in the summer of '25, and also CHS roof sections 9 and 10, which we will tackle next summer. We discussed the capital reserve and balance, and the ability to continue to fund that capital reserve account each year being important to us. And then finally, continued discussions on both Harding and full-day kindergarten, which take up time at every meeting we have. Our next meeting is October 30th.
Okay, great. Thank you. And policy and planning, Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, we discussed policy 5118, which addresses non-resident students. We were in the process of making some changes to that policy to accommodate certain situations, and we actually came up with one during the meeting where there was a request for a Chatham resident that was doing renovations to their home, and they would be displaced from their home for a long period of time, and how to address, that student, any students in those situations. So we added temporary situations like that to policy 1551. Those students will be allowed to continue, although they're sleeping in a different place. They are going through a home renovation. They own the property. They're paying taxes in Chatham. So we're allowing those students to remain in the school district. We discussed, it's on the agenda tonight, 1531.9, the passive alcohol censor. And we had two student tuition inquiries, ironically from Harding, a 3rd grader and a 9th grader. Their parents want to pay for their students to come here, and we accepted those. And we had 2 hardship cases for kindergarten. One was approved and one was not. Next meeting is October 30th. That's it.
Okay. Moving on to liaison reports. Anybody have anything to report?
Yeah, I have one for CF. It's reported in the finance part, but CF approved a grant totaling $6,300 to bring the New Jersey Symphony Partnership back to the district. Mainly, it's going to expand the program at the middle school, but it's also present at the high school in Lafayette. And then Trivia Night, which is CF's major event, super fun. It will be this year, Saturday, November 16th, held at the high school gym. Registration is going to open this Thursday, the 17th at 9 o'clock. So we remind everybody to register quickly, as this one really does sell out fast. Thanks.
Awesome, always a fun
Plus,
night.
I'm looking for trivia members if anybody wants to play. Okay. November 16th. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Chatham Advisory Board met on September 17th. Meeting covered basically basketball clubs, gym needs, and how they'll be paid for, pretty much what Brad was talking about a few minutes ago. And I believe they had a meeting today, Michael and Dr. Mike and Peter had a meeting with the club because we no longer provide custodians at any of the grammar schools or the middle school on Saturdays as cost-saving measures for our school district. So they have to pay basically overtime for a fellow to be there or a woman to be there overtime, a custodian. So that was discussed. I think they worked it out today, and so that was done. Also, there was a meeting about the idea that if in the event that Harding comes over here with their for high school, that the rec department might be able to consume and accommodate Harding kids to come play rec sports in our town. And that meeting went way sideways, so not a lot got done there, and they'll have to have another meeting about that later on, so that'll come up in November at some point.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? That's it? Okay, moving on. I'd like to motion that we pass the minutes from the last meeting. Mr. DeQuilla?
I'll second it.
As a reminder, Ms. Ross and Mr. Smith need to abstain. Ms. Ross?
Abstain.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Abstain.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Chicarelli.
Yes.
Resolution passes 602.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, this is going to be our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. And if you would just please sign in and state your name and where you are from, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Mandy Major. I am the president of the Chatham Education Association, the new president. This is my 20th year at Chatham Middle School, so you could say I am a longtime listener, first-time caller. I am very happy to be here, though, to speak on behalf of the teachers and staff, specifically about the various transitions of full-day kindergarten, third grade entering into Lafayette Avenue, and fifth grade joining the Chatham Middle School. As we all know, the changes will be impacting virtually the entire district, from secretaries, custodians, maintainers, paraprofessionals, and teachers in 5 of the 6 schools. The middle school has begun to prioritize all the parts to make this a smooth transition, and to say this is an overwhelming and far-reaching undertaking for the staff and administration is an understatement. However, as with all the other changes that the staff of our district have experienced over the years, we will do our best to rise to the occasion with grace and professionalism. We hope that the administration will be as transparent and communicative as possible by continuing to allow association representatives to be present when various decisions are being discussed and made at each building. It goes without saying that these changes are impacting adults and children, and as you all would like us to have open ears and open minds, we hope that the administration reciprocates this when it comes to the concerns of the staff that will be implementing the changes on the day-to-day. Also, just to be clear, teachers are creatures of change. We are definitely not creatures of habit. We literally get a new class every year. Our math and ELA teachers have to deal with ever-changing instructional programs more often than they probably like. 20 years is a long time. I've been at CMS almost half my life. I've seen 4 different principals and 3 different daily schedules, now going on to a 4th schedule next year. It's an average of having a new principal or a new schedule every 5 years. The change is the exciting part, right? September is the exciting part of the year. It's a new year. But the space that we're in right now is, how is this going to happen? What is that going to look like exactly? And that space makes things stressful for everybody. But I'm hopeful that in time, these answers will come, and next year the teachers and staff at Milton, Southern Boulevard, Washington, Lafayette, and CMS will hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations on your presidency.
And 20 years.
That too.
Good evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. With regard to Harding, I was out on my bike last weekend and this weekend riding through the swamp and through Harding, and somebody has taken the trouble to make up lawn signs in opposition to the merger. It appears that they want to stay at Madison, so I don't know who you're talking to and whether they are in line with their constituents and how big this is. But somebody went to that trouble, and there was more than one of them. Just wanted to point that out. Also, I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I do find some ironies with regard to this. Starting 6 or 8 years ago, at the dawn of River Road and when all of these things were being talked about with regard to affordable housing and development, you were clutching your pearls and sweating bullets about the number of students that were going to be sent your way by the municipalities due to this development. And now we find ourselves in a position of talking to our neighbors next door. I think you found out what lots of manufacturing and production facilities find out, is that you need feedstock. I ran a machine shop for 45 years, and when business went south, I could pull the plug on my milling machines and grinders. I could tell my guys to do some maintenance, to build some new fixtures. We would pull in our horns and wait for business to get better. It's not easy for you to pull the plug on teachers. You can't tell them to go up on the roof and fix the HVAC systems. So you need bodies flowing through to support the level of assets that we have built up. We have an educated population. They should be able to understand that fact. They may not like it, but that's what it is. As far as whether this is good for the taxpayers or not, I guess I would be in much more favor of this if you were, besides saying it was, to do something like, maybe declare a moratorium on second questions for the length of the contract. I'd be thrilled about that and could come around to see some support. Also, I would warn you to not give away the goods on the cheap. Things cost more than it appears. We have hidden costs. We were just discussing how all of a sudden turf fields go from 500,000 to $1 million. It's easy for Harding Township to get a price. They're thrilled with that. They're going to be paying, our student cost is approaching $25,000. You're going to give them a discount. I hope the discount is not too steep. You ought to consider the fact that Kent Place and Mo Beard and all the other private schools are somewhere north of 50 grand now. They will be getting a tremendous bargain by coming here because this school is every bit as good as any of those private schools. And quite frankly, if they don't like the price, let them build their own high school. So please don't give away the merchandise. I think it would benefit you to make sure that the price they're paying is going to be in line with what it really costs us to send students here. But thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Heap.
Hello, Kara Firth here, representing Washington Avenue School. Just a couple quick things. I know you talked about the potential time changes. Is there any idea when you think that might be made? and I know not right now, and you're talking to bus companies and stuff, but just any kind of little bit helps when dealing with little mini children changes. The other question, with regards to the Harding situation, is there any kind of timeline that I know you're saying it wouldn't be starting until August 26th, but any idea when you guys would be fully extending the offer to Harding, or when they might be accepting or making their final decision? And then also, any idea if there will be a cap involved, or if we're just assuming that it maintains between the 20 to 40 kids per year? And with regards to kindergarten for the following year, if you have any idea what the price will be. I know, again, 2 years ago it was stated that it would be free for 2025, 2026. Doesn't seem like that's happening. Looking around the same, higher. Any guidance that you can give to any of those three issues would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this session of public commentary. There is another opportunity later in the meeting. Just to answer some of those questions. I'll do what I can and then pass over to Dr. LaSuso what I don't know the answers to. As far as, Kara, for a couple of your questions, as far as the Harding timeline, we don't have any exact specifics because there are still a number of steps that they have to go through, such as applying with the state and the county and those kinds of things. So we don't know how long those will take. We're just trying to help them with any due diligence that they need, that we can give them information on. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we won't really know until they make those formal applications, and it depends on how long that takes. I mean, I would assume that they know, the county and the state know that they have a contract that's expiring in 2026, so I would hope that they would help them to be able to make a decision, whether it's here, Madison, or wherever they end up going. But we'll keep you guys in the loop as we hear any further information as we move along. As far as the time change, I guess we don't know yet, right, as to Dr.
Yeah,
Susali.
the goal would be by the end of January, if we were going to make a change, to announce that, but we're still waiting.
To announce it by the end of January,
Yes.
if it were going to be for next year.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, and then kindergarten, do you want to answer that as far as kindergarten tuition?
Yeah, that's premature because that will depend on what our budget picture looks like when we are putting it together in March/April.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we never, to my knowledge, said we would offer free kindergarten. What we said is that everyone up here wants to get to the point where we can offer free kindergarten. But unfortunately, the budget doesn't allow it at this time. And we'll see what comes of the next budget.
Yeah.
And the only other one there is if a district enters into a send-receive relationship, it can't cap the number of students.
We take the entire town.
The relationship
or-
is
right.
that you accept the students that are graduating or moving up from 8th grade from the K-8.
But,
Right.
I mean, how many, traditionally, they have, what, 40 kids in those
Yep.
25 to 40 kids
Yep.
per class?
Right.
If we were to explore what other districts have done, which is to, let's say Harding decides they don't want anything to do with Chatham for one reason or another, and we were to explore admitting tuition students at large here and developing some type of process where students in nearby districts, wherever they might be, could apply to attend school here, then we can cap the number.
Right, but you can't.
Yes, so there are
Eliminate a certain
districts
number
who
of
say,
kids
we
from one
will admit
district,
up to 10 students in the freshman class this year, up to 20 students, up to whatever it might be.
Right.
And we could base that number on our enrollment, and we then would be in a position where we could limit the number of students total and
Yeah.
put in other parameters on what we want. And I should just mention that we've averaged over the past 10 years about 20 kids per year tuition-paying students in the district. but the majority have been staff, the children of staff members, because board policy at the present time is that district staff pay 35% of the published tuition rate. So we've had tuition students here every year for as long as any of us can remember. And I think this year we're down to about 10 students, but the number has been more like 20 for most years. And that's throughout the whole district. Obviously, we're only talking about the high school right now.
Right, right. So, yeah, and basically the cap with somebody like Harding would be the length of the contract. So, you know, it's not going to be an open-ended contract. We will determine a specific length of a contract, probably somewhere plus or minus 5 years. Okay. So, moving on to our regular agenda now, the action items for personnel. Ms. Weber?
Great, thank you, Ann. I'd like to move personnel items A1 through A25 on the regular agenda, and there's an addendum, so number 7 on the addendum replaces number 7 on the regular agenda, and then 13, 14, and 20, there's just additional names added to that particular category, and number 26 on the addendum is a brand-new item.